most people are underbranded, right? They're over delivering and they're underbranded. So what people need to recognize is that if you don't give people the language to talk about you when you're not in the room, if you don't tell people what your expertise is and what it is you do and what it is you love to do, you're doing yourself a disservice because people won't know. And if they don't know, they're not going to give it to you.
Three, two, one. Welcome to the Campfire Circle. I'm your host, Tanya Bhattacharya, and I empower purpose-driven women in building influential personal brands that drive change and raise revenue. We all talk about getting a seat at the table, but why though? Who wants to sit in a stuffy boardroom anyway? Let's reimagine the ultimate space of leadership as a campfire circle, where we share stories that inspire movements, build brave communities to huddle together with for warmth, and where there is always room. Come sit with us. So, as a keynote speaker, corporate trainer, and coach who specializes in personal branding for the hybrid workplace, Cher has made it her mission to teach leaders who love their jobs and the companies they work for how to develop a strategic personal brand at work so they can take charge of their own success. As Cher says, our personal brand is a powerful business tool to establish trust, credibility, and belonging in a world where face-to-face is not always an option. But with everyone checking LinkedIn before they take a call, respond to an email, or accept a meeting request, it's fair to say the brands of most professionals are not working for them. But that's where Cher can help. I personally met Cher through Clubhouse last year, and then through catching her epic weekly LinkedIn Lives, which I'm sure we'll be talking about in just a bit. But for now, Cher, I want to welcome you to the Campfire Circle podcast. Thanks for being here.
I got my marshmallows ready and I'm ready to rock. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. Okay, quick question for you. Do you like your marshmallows super crispy burnt, like black around the marshmallow, or do you like them like lightly toasted?
Black around the marshmallow.
Okay, me too.
Okay.
Me too.
I thought you were going to shame me.
No, not at all. Those are my favorite. I like when it literally lights on fire and then I just pop it in my mouth after the fire gets out. I love that. Crispy, sweet, perfect.
Exactly.
All right, Cher, this is a fun question for folks like us who are always kind of helping other people craft their brands and their stories. Mm-hmm. But Cher, I want to know your story. So what did you grow through to become the guide that you are today?
I love that question just because there's so many iterations to Cher Jones. It's crazy. But I see how they all, we just connect the dots in those stories and we see and we pluck little pieces of experiences from one piece to the next, one iteration to the next. So I started my career in broadcast journalism and sports broadcasting, to be specific. And I thought I was going to be the next Hannah Storm, Pam Oliver. These are like old school women in sports. And then I had my second son, Kobe, and working for the Raptors, which is in the basketball season, which is nights and weekends. If you have two children, one who was like school aged and one was a brand new baby, it just wasn't working for my family. So I had to literally reinvent myself. And so I moved into the marketing and communication space where I was doing a lot of copywriting. So I took my broadcast journalism experience, a lot of production, so media production side of live television, cutting highlights for the pre and the post game show, getting interviews, all that kind of stuff, to moving into copywriting, because that was like the first glimpse of working from home. This is a long time ago. So this is like the internet just became a thing and accessible for everybody beyond CDs, right? So I wrote copy for a while, and it was like direct mail copywriting, which is a very hardcore, hard sales copywriting. I did not like it at all. And I didn't stay at that job for too long. And I moved into more of a consulting role with another company. And I was able to take on a communications manager role where I helped them develop their presence and build trust in smaller communities where they wanted to bring shopping malls to. And that was like the big fear of bringing in like things like Walmart or large drugstores where it's like, we're going to take over, Main Street and bring all this new fandangled stuff. So we had to create trust and build a presence and a brand for this company and the people behind the brand. And then the real estate crash So we're talking 2009. I'm really trying to fast forward through my career here, but each one of these pieces, you're going to see how they connect the dots. I went back into copywriting because the crash happened. And then I went into PR and communications for the city of Toronto. So a lot of government PR. And at this time, this is when Obama had just won the elections. We had a mayor who was really prolific on Twitter when Twitter was like the hotness for everything. And most of the communicators in the city, and there were about 130 of them total, weren't very comfortable with social media. And this was like, I love technology. Like literally, I've been using it all throughout my career, learned how to code websites when it was like real coding, not drag and dropping, and all that kind of stuff. And while I was at the city, my client base, which was the social development division, and they did a lot of work inside priority neighborhoods. They did a lot of work with people, and their work, well, sometimes, yes, we're opening up community centers and other infrastructure type projects. They don't get as much media attention as other areas. So we started using social media, and that was really under my guidance because I had to develop the communication strategies for the entire division, which had like about, let's say, 10 to 12 sections, which are their own individual companies, kind of like within the city to make it easy for communication's sake. Anyways, did that for 4 years. But while I was at the city, if you said Cher Jones, you said social media in the same sentence, because I started to build my brand in the city with over 35,000 employees for the city of Toronto. I started to realize that there was an opportunity to help people, help other divisions, help other communicators use social media. So I developed the city's first communications training on social media and taught all of those communicators. I also helped them develop their policies for employees, because when I started working there, only 25 people had access to social media, and I was one of them. So I wanted to be at that table and bring perspective in, because most of them were senior communicators or they were in IT on the web, but they weren't social. So I had to bring like, here's the perspective on actual users using social media and what that means. Anyways, my internal clients started recommending me to their external community partners saying, hey, can you speak to youth about using social media for jobs and not wrecking their entire futures by posting drunk pictures or whatever? But then I realized that why are we telling them about the negative? And then also not only youth, but also newcomers to Canada and how they could leverage social media to get work and whatnot. And I was like, listen, let's take it from an asset-based perspective. Like, how can you build a brand that people want to hire you? Because it's hard to ignore awesome on the internet. So that's really where that journey started to come into play. And in 2013, I said, listen, I'm going to do this in some way, shape, or capacity full time. And over the last almost 10 years, basically my brand has morphed from a social media trainer that kind of specialized in personal branding to a personal branding expert at work, how to leverage social media for work at work, because we're recognizing that, like you said in the intro, people look you up before they call you. And now in this hybrid world of work, it's even more so. The old school know, like, and trust factor is still there. But we have this digital technology layered on that if you don't know how to build a brand that people can trust as a leader, as an expert, or just as someone who's working day to day with the right partners and customers and community providers, whatever, you need to show up for business. Or if you're an entrepreneur, same thing, especially if you're a consultant or subject matter expert in the space, whatever industry you are in, you got to show up.
So good. I love how your story is actually very much like a beautiful mosaic that has come together to position you perfectly to do what you do now. And so much of what you said really resonated. You know, I tend to work, or I know a lot of people who are brilliant relationship builders in real life, like IRL, I guess. They're fundraisers, they're movement makers, they're deeply entrenched in their community. And it's like, they're not really necessarily sure how to translate that onto our digital world, because we are in a hybrid world now. Right. And so, you know, one of the things I always ask people is if you're dreamiest, dreamy board member, if you're hell yes client, if you're, you know, amazing aligned referral source looked you up on LinkedIn today, would they want to work with you? Would they accept your meeting request? Would they want to work with you? And that's kind of the question we have to ask ourselves. But, as I think about what you do, because you go into workplaces and do this, I would think that one of the biggest fear points or scarcity mindset fear points that come up in the business owners that you talk to first is, what if I invest money in my employee's personal brand and they built such a standout brand that they get poached or they get recruited out? Do you ever hear that concern?
All the time. And it's interesting because one of the things that I don't do, and this was a choice for my brand, is I don't work with active job seekers. I help people be opportunity ready should opportunities present themselves, whether at work or for other companies. But when I hear that, that legitimate concern, because I don't want to devalue that, because it's definitely a legitimate concern. What are you doing to keep them? Right? Why would they want to be like right now in this great resignation, great relaunch, great everything, reinvention of who people are? Employers have to work a lot harder or step up to the plate as far as making sure that you are providing a great place to work, because it's more than just money. It's more about belonging and inclusion. And when you start to incorporate the brands of your employees into the bigger brand, you will see that they have also created an attachment, ownership, a sense of ownership, especially when you start to co-create with your employee creators. And I think that's where the next wave of what we're going to see of just the growth of personal branding in the workspace is really leveraging your employee experts and putting them out there. Because at the end of the day, if they are well branded, not only, oh yes, they are for sure, they're at risk of being poached. Let's not pretend like that doesn't exist. But at the same time, well-branded employees who seem to love their job, the work they do, also attract new all-star talent to the team, also get better results with their clients as far as the relationships, the loyalty that comes with relationships. So clients wanting to stay with this company because of the relationship they have. Because at this point, so many people are competing on price. So it does come down to, or thinking they're competing on price. So it does come down to relationship, why I would choose one company or another. And then as well, you've got being able to showcase culture, right? Through how they're showcasing what it's like to work. If they're talking about, initiatives that the company has going on that people can resonate with. And we're looking at, especially with Gen Z and especially younger millennials as well, they're really wanting to attach their brand to a brand that seems to care and seems to have people that look like them, who they can connect with. So there's more pluses as far as leveraging the brands of your people, and then there is about putting into building up their brand in fear that they're going to leave, because that's usually they're leaving not just because they have a great brand.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. That's a great answer. Ooh, and what comes up for me is kind of that saying, right? Like, instead of worrying, like, what if I invest in my team and they leave? Worrying about, like, the bigger issue is, what if I don't invest in my team and they stay, and it's not a good culture, and that's it. I think it's that reframing.
It, exactly. That is.
Hey, if anything you're hearing today inspires you to get more visible as a go-to trusted voice for your audience and drive change towards your deeper mission, I've got something for you. LinkedIn is my favorite place to share my stories and build relationships with my co-conspirators and brand new friends. So I put together a free resource with 14 prompts to create your next post on LinkedIn. Take all the guesswork out of what to say and just start building your impact and influence. Be sure to tag me in your post so I can come by, cheer you on, and amplify your message. You can find those free prompts in the show notes. Okay, back to the episode. Well, let's continue this conversation about, like, these scary stories, right? Because we're around the campfire circle. We've got our burnt marshmallows. What do we do at the campfire circle? We share scary stories and kind of debunk them. So speaking of fear, right? There's a lot of self-limiting beliefs that are kind of attached to this concept of personal branding and visibility. And I would love to know, like, what are some of the mindset shifts that you frequently work with your clients on and guiding folks as they work on owning their expertise? What is coming up for them?
Most people are underbranded. right? They're over delivering and they're under branded. So what people need to recognize is that if you don't give people the language to talk about you when you're not in the room, if you don't tell people what your expertise is and what it is you do and what it is you love to do, you're doing yourself a disservice because people won't know. And if they don't know, they're not going to give it to you. Also, the social wheel gets the grease. So that's what we're seeing now is people who are getting ahead is because they're visible, right? So it's credibility. So the work that you do in your brand, the language that you associate to your brand so that you can give people language to talk about you, whether it's your clients, whether it's a sponsor at work or someone championing you and opportunities for you, you need to give them something to talk about. And you, as the individual personal brand, the burden of proof is on you. So that's with your language, right? So the credibility, how you show up, what you say about yourself so that people already are like, because usually you're the best source, right? They look you up because they want to know who you are. So what you tell them is all they know at this point, right? Yeah. So it's your job to make sure that you're not over branding and brand fishing. Right? So you don't want to be brand fishing out there. But at the same time, if you don't get in the mindset of letting people know how you can help them, and that's, I think, the mindset shift that you're asking for is most people, especially I would say around 35 and up from an age group perspective, all the way up into their 60s, like the concept of bragging about themselves is a turnoff, but they're not, because what they're doing is they're shifting from not here's what I've done, look at me, to here's how I can help you. That's and this is why you can trust me, because this is what I've done.
And I wonder if that 30, because I'm 35. I wonder if that cutoff is because I kind of grew up. I remember not having social media. I remember not having a phone when I was a kid, right? I kind of got, Facebook came out when I was like right around starting college. So I wonder if that has to do with it. Like people under 35 kind of have a native proficiency in building a brand around themselves. They might not have known that's what they were doing when they were playing on Facebook and stuff in college, but they were building a reputation and an online brand. Yes. And speaking of that, I'm just wondering, like, when you talk about this distaste around bragging about ourselves or maybe being humble to a fault or being conditioned to be seen and not heard, I'm just curious because you work within larger workplace settings. I usually work like one-on-one with people. But when you go into a larger workplace setting and do a training or a keynote session, I'm just curious if you've noted a difference in how historically underestimated groups, such as women of color, such as people of color, right? Respond to building their personal brand versus maybe like white hetero men?
Okay. One of the biggest differences is that we've been culturally at home told to just do a good job and you will be noticed. Right. And it doesn't work like that anymore. So what we are battling is, societal norms, if you will, of how things have worked in the past. And yes, there is progression. Yes, there is change and there's spotlights around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And that's amazing stuff. In addition to that, what you have also is the home training. So you just, that whole idea of don't brag, don't bring attention to yourself. That is all the time. Just keep your head down. Work is not for friends. You just go there, you do your work, you go home. And it's just, that does not work. You need to raise your hand. You need to be able to articulate your value. And that again goes against the grain of speaking up, right? Yeah. So we also have been taught over years that anybody in a supervisory position, someone who has leverage or power over us, that we're not to challenge them, right? So those are things that again come into play. And so speaking up for yourself and owning what makes you awesome has been something that's not natural to us. Whereas other, let's say white heterosexual men, they've been socialized that you tell people about yourself, you own everything that you bring to the table. And you know what? I can appreciate that privilege because I noticed that my children who are, in like I have one who is now 19 and 26. So my kids are a little far apart, but both of them, they walk with a different sense of expectation and privilege than I did, right? They're still traversing this world, but they do have more power and authority in who they are and what they're willing to own. So there's definitely a huge difference. And then the whole socialization, you add in women on top of that, or if you have an accent, right? Those sort of things also. It's just like all the little roadblocks, all the little speed bumps along the same path that we want to get to the end of the path. Those get in the way.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to name how beautiful it is that your children now are traversing the world in a different way than maybe you have. That's the work, right? That's the work. Because as we show up in our power and kind of unlearn these trainings, these conditionings that we've had, we almost not give permission. That's not the right word, but make it possible for other people, whether we have children or not, people who are looking up to us, because you can't be what you can't see, or so they say. But you're right. There's like one saying that comes to mind is like the tallest poppy gets whacked, right? There's all these sayings like don't stand out, keep your head down. And I had to laugh a little bit when you're like, work is not for making friends. That was such, or school is not for making friends. That was such a thing that was said in my household. When in reality, the connections and the relationships you build are really the piece. I mean, that's the piece.
Exactly.
That's kind of how I've gotten every opportunity I've gotten is through relationships, not learning, I don't know, geometry or whatever it is. Yeah,
exactly. We're rewiring a lot of stuff that has been socially ingrained by our parents and people who love us. Right.
Yeah.
So those are those things that are like, oh my gosh, I need to unpack this and then rewire my brain to be like, no, I need to build these relationships. I need to speak out and I need to let people know what I'm good at so that they can use me more in those situations where I can add the best value. So it's a lot of unpacking and rewiring and giving yourself the language to feel good about it, about what you're putting out in the world and actually owning that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think in so many ways, personal branding is really a therapeutic practice, or at least it can be. It can be. And one of the things that I still haven't really been able to fully overcome is my fear of going live. Okay. So there's a reason that I started a podcast and not like an improv show or or a YouTube channel. Like I think you and I could probably agree that LinkedIn is one of the best tools for building your personal brand. And they have so many different things that they're rolling out for creators, from newsletters to live. And I just haven't done the live piece. And I really actually want to learn from you if you're willing to share. Like,
absolutely.
Because you have built such a wonderful standout LinkedIn live show. And now that I've realized that your background is in production, I kind of get it because they're engaging, they're fun. I always learn. I meet people in the comments. Like I have invested serious dollars in actually group coaching programs where I didn't show up on the weekly calls because I just wasn't like called to do that. But I will show up to your LinkedIn lives because they're a party. They're engaging. So can you like spill some of your secrets on producing a fabulous LinkedIn live?
Absolutely. I'm really excited that you asked this question as well, because I think it is such a powerful tool. And recently it's going through the final approval stages, but I did a LinkedIn learning for LinkedIn Live. And it's all about creating your show and what you can do to engage your guests. So that's something to table for the fall. But one thing that I want to tell you is really when you're doing a live, you've got to remember, even if you have an audience, even if you have a guest on your show, your audience is your third guest. So you need to have an interactive conversation with them. You also need to make sure that you're acknowledging your audience on the replay, because those are technically the audience. Because what people don't recognize is that most of your viewers will actually come when the live is over. So you have to make it an event for those that show up live. And you've got to literally bring them in, because when people hear other names being called, they're literally there like Dumb and Dumber, not the movie. So you're saying there's a chance, right? It's like, it's a 1 in a million chance you're going to say my name. So it's like that movie where it's just like, oh my gosh, what if she says my name? What if I get in there? And like people feel so good to be acknowledged and part of it. And as a result, like I look at my stats, like I don't get a lot of dip. So like those who stay on for the duration of the show. I also, recognize, so another tip buried into that is recognizing the length of my show. I try to go for 30 minutes and then I end up around 42 minutes. At the end of the day, it's about engaging them as part of the conversation, like they're, because they are there. They are, it's not TV. It's not you and your guest and that's it. Like this intimate conversation that we're having. You've got people going back and forth. And so it's just a wonderful tool. And then having stuff that's specifically for your audience and not your active guest, so to speak. So you have questions that you immediately engage them so that they're there. Also recognizing when you're doing a live, your first, let's say 3 minutes, you're talking to your replay viewers because everybody's not there yet. So you've got to go like, remember that 90% of your audience is watching this first part because that's what's going to hook them in to watch the rest.
That makes sense because now when I think back to your lives in the beginning, you're very much like, hey, everyone, like, are you team live? Are you team replay? So you're getting people commenting right away and engaging right away, asking special questions. And that's a really great point. I think LinkedIn Live, we think like, okay, it's this period of time and then it's over. But no, it's like evergreen content that you could repurpose later. It lives on your page.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
That's it. And I think about it because I have the Peloton app, right? I have the Peloton app and I usually don't always hit the classes live, but even after the fact, they still make it engaging and they're calling people out for their 1,000th class and stuff. So it feels less like I'm a spectator and more like I'm part of a community or a real live spin class, and I think that's what you've been able to do really well.
There's actually a community called Podcasters Live. It's on YouTube. There's Steve Worthy does it. And what he does is he helps podcasters bring their podcast into the live space if you want to create a live broadcast as well. And that's something you should consider doing because you're great. You could totally do it live without a problem. Of course, in the beginning, you're going to deal with the tech like everybody else. Like it's like, what the tech? But you figure it out and then you're good to go.
What the tech? It's thank you for saying that. And it's funny because I very specifically started a podcast so that I could have like control and I could edit it. But yeah, it's that fear, right? It's that fear of the unknown. It's not having control. It's like, what if things get screwed up? And I just know that if I feel that way, there's many other people who feel that way too. And so, back to the mindset stuff, is there anything that you would say to someone out there, maybe that you would say to me, who's like, oh, I don't know, what if everything goes wrong? How would you support them in just like getting over that hump and just trying it?
Yes. So the first thing I tell you to do is go broadcast to a private YouTube channel or unlisted YouTube channel just to get the kinks out, because really what it is, it's about leveraging the technology and speaking at the same time, right? So you're walking and chewing gum at the same time. So what you need to do is figure out, like, you don't want to go live to LinkedIn, like your money network the first time, right? So go practice, right? Grab a couple of friends and say, I just need to practice switching the camera. I just need to practice putting up the graphics or whatever, if I have an intro, starting the intro or anything like that. You want to do that so that you can just get the willies out, right? And then once you do that, honestly, what you'll love is just the fact your lives are just similar to your podcast in the sense there's no editing afterwards unless you want to grab pieces. And then if you're thinking about repurposing a live, and this is really important too, is you just have to make sure that you know what sections in your rundown. So you have a list of things that it's kind of like an agenda. So a run of show, I call it a rundown. They call that in broadcasting. And basically it's just your agenda of what's going to happen next. You can carve out spots in your agenda, your rundown, where you know that you're going to chop that. So at that point, you're not going to interact with your audience in this one section because you know that you're going to repackage that piece as something later, maybe for another network or as its own standalone content later on LinkedIn that you can reuse and recycle and all that good stuff. So definitely take the plunge, practice, just practice with the tech and you'll be fine. And I have so many shows where the tech messed up, where I've splashed water on my computer. I had lipstick on my teeth. My mic was not working like so many million times where it's like, oh my gosh, the mic's not on. And all those things, they happen and it's live and it's not that deep. It's not a big deal. You just keep it moving. You push through it.
Yeah. I love that answer for many reasons. One, I think it points to the fact that sometimes we see someone maybe like you, or we see someone who's been doing this for a long time and we're just like, well, they're amazing. I'm never going to get there, so I'm not even going to try. And the fact is, there's so much work behind the scenes, so much practice, so much, if I think about public speaking, so much practicing in the mirror, rehearsing before they go on stage and like kill it that one time. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we just don't necessarily see. So, and
Exactly.
yeah, practice makes perfect.
It
Practice makes
does.
perfect.
It really does. And you're progressing the entire way through. And even though I know my starting level is higher than most just because of my broadcasting background, I still see this significant progress between like episode 1 and episode 50, like just as far as the transformation, the comfort, and is really the comfort in the mess up, because the mess ups, the tech is going to happen. It's just how you roll with it. You know what I mean? And it's just in the beginning, you feel like it's the end of the world, and it's really not that deep.
Right, right. That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. Actually, the founder of LinkedIn came up with this quote, Reid Hoffman. He's like, if your first attempt at something doesn't eventually embarrass you, you've waited too long to even try. And that's
Love
it.
that.
That's it.
Love that.
Uh, so this time flew by. We're nearing the end of this conversation. But one of the things I always love to ask my guests towards the end is, like, what is your big dreamy vision for the future? Like, what world are you working towards through your work?
It's interesting because it's morphing. Like this last few years of digital acceleration has been eye-opening as far as opportunities, as far as where the world is going, as far as personal branding. So I can see in my immediate future, definitely my book. I'm working on that. And it really does focus on personal branding at work, because I feel like there's a bit of a glut there as far as personal branding for people who actually love their jobs, want to stand out and do well and own their awesome at work, and become, whether it's an employee influencer or employee creator or both, or whatever the case may be, like leveraging their brand to access those hidden opportunities. Also, I was just discussing this actually today, just as far as what's the next iteration for what I do. I still might see myself as an entrepreneur, but I also see now, as the world is changing, as companies are recognizing that they do have employee creators and employee influencers at work, working for a multinational company that wants to really invest in the brands of their people and create a dynamic program that could change the way they interact and engage with their partners, their investors, their clients, the industry at large, leveraging the people that are behind the brand. So people powered branding strategy, and just leveraging that specific area of it, or growing that in a company. I don't know, like a huge multinational company. It'd have to be big for me to leave what I do. But I still also want to take the stage on a large scale level in accompanying my book. So it's all in the same space. It's just that growth of what I'm doing. And yeah, just it's hard to say. And then also exploring the metaverse and what your brand looks like in the metaverse, and like going beyond the application of gaming. And because I just love technology, right? But going beyond that, and how people are going to be like, basically, it's like, don't sleep on what's next. And the metaverse is next. And being an early adopter, but an adopter / educator, as I educate myself, because I don't fully get it yet. And I'm seeing these immersive worlds. I'm seeing how, especially with this digital acceleration of life and business and everything else in between, it is going to, in the next 10 years, how we interact and engage is going to change completely. And I want to be on the front end, not the back end. So it's understanding that, and, just exploring that.
Yeah. Oh, I see all of this so clearly for you. And I will continue to be learning from you, because I don't understand the metaverse at all. But you're right. I mean, it is what's next. It is what's next. Wow. Oh, okay. So, Cher, how can people find you and get in touch with you and work with you?
Absolutely. The best place is just LinkedIn, right? You can go to my website. That's fine, which is sociallyactivetraining.com. Or, but I say the best place is, let's connect. Let's engage.
Yeah.
Meet me on LinkedIn, or on Instagram or on Twitter. I'm on all the places, but the best place is definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. So when you go over to my profile, there's three little dots. It says follow, but if you click the three little dots behind it, you can get in and press connect, and let's connect and grow together. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's what it's all about, connecting, because it's a two-way street. It's a relationship, right? It's a relationship. So,
exactly.
Cher, thank you so much for this time. I've learned so much. I'm so excited to go out and maybe try my first live. And
you have to.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been such a treat.
Awesome. I appreciated being on the show. You are going to have no problem doing live whatsoever.
From your lips to God's ears. Let's do it.
Amen.
What'd you think? Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or even better, reach out and let me know through lumosmarketing.co. Yes, that's Lumos, as in the illumination spell from Harry Potter. Because when you shine, magical things happen. You can get social with me on LinkedIn, and of course, check out the show notes to stay in touch with our guests. Let's talk soon.